is Evan Borgo. I am from the Boston Bachelor Brigade, and I am the host of the No Borders No Race J-Pop and Alternative podcast show.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yes, and first of all, longtime fan. Thank you so much for joining us here at Anime Boston.
I'm so stoked to be here. Again.
Now, as some people may know, one of your very first roles was as of the iconic character of Hello Kitty
Yes.
for the animation theater series. Now, as this was like your very first role and playing such an iconic character in both like fashion, toys, and for everybody, was there a lot of pressure in your portrayal of this character?
Good question. Actually, it wasn't my first. It came along pretty far in, so I was pretty secure as a voice actor. That being said, I was a huge fan of Hello Kitty. My first job ever as a working adult was at a Sanrio store. Like, that's how much I love Hello Kitty. My best friend growing up was Miki Takase, and she would go to Japan and bring me back all kinds of like little Hello Kitty and Hello Twin Stars and all that kind of stuff. So I was in love with Sanrio. When we found out that it was coming through, Sanrio actually chose the voices. So there was a part of me that was like, I really want to play the kitty, but I'd be totally fine with anything else because I love all the characters. And Tiffany Grant, who was also a huge Hello Kitty fan, we were kind of like, I want to play the kitty. No, I want to play the kitty. And so Sanrio ultimately chose me, which was awesome. But yeah, it was hard because it was like, here's this kitty. I love the kitty. I didn't know that the kitty even spoke, but hey, I get to give it a voice. What does that voice sound like? And then figuring out what the voice is going to be, and then, bringing all those characters to life. It was rad, though. Even today, I meet people who are like, who are just now starting to go to conventions, and they're like, I listened to you. Like, I grew up with you because you were Hello Kitty, and that was the only anime my mom would let me watch because it was safe. And so it's been really, really cool to kind of have these kids come up, and they're like, I love Hello Kitty now, and it's all because of you. And I'm like, aw, I love Hello Kitty too, but it had nothing to do with me. So I'm glad that it kind of that circle of life thing going on.
Awesome.
Anime Herald? Hello.
Hi, I'm Mike from Anime Herald.
Hi.
And I'm also the host of the Nerdy Talk podcast.
Awesome.
Big fan, so it's a
Oh,
pleasure to meet you.
so sweet. Oh my god, you guys.
But basically, you've been in the industry since 1999. You're basically part of the big kids club now.
Thank you.
So, what would you say has been the biggest, most positive or most surprising change you've seen since starting off in the industry?
Oh, probably the biggest has been like the economics of it all. Starting off and having it be like this niche thing that maybe like a couple of 50-year-old men like, to it being this thing where like all of a sudden like I'd go to cons and it was a bunch of dudes, and then there would be like a girl or two, and watching girls kind of sneak into cons, and then it stopped being VHS, and all of a sudden it was DVDs, and that whole dub versus sub thing kind of watered down a little bit. And then now, then there was a rough patch when the internet started, and everybody started pirating because it wasn't coming out fast enough. And then the companies were like, oh, well, we got you now. Here's your broadcast dubs and your simulcasts. And it's been interesting watching all of that happen. The way that the industry has kind of moved and ebbed and flowed over the years and kind of going along with it. I mean, like in the middle of the 2000s, like it got scary. Like I had to leave Houston because ADV was kind of, and so I moved to Dallas because I was offered a directing gig, and I'd kind of lived through my savings. I'm like, well, I guess I'm moving to Dallas. So it was a really scary time. So it's been neat to kind of watch this resurgence, but also there's a hesitancy to get too complacent and happy because I've already been through the pew once and I don't want to do it again. But it's been cool to see that. It's also cool to see like people that I met at cons really early on are still going to cons, but now they have their kids or their kids' kids, or it's really grown in that there's so many more different types of people that are involved in anime. And I think a lot of it is people that grew up with Dragon Ball and grew up with Pokemon and grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh! And all those things. Like those are the people now who are grown adults, and we're seeing at these cons. And it's really, really cool to see the impact that it's had. People are also much more open about the kind of anime they watch. Back in the day, like if you liked giant robots, that's what you liked, and that was it. or if you liked, comedy, that was it. Now people are like, oh, sweet, I'll try that giant robot show. Give me some of that slice of life. And hey, how about that comedy? It's great. So I feel like fans have gotten more diverse as a whole, and then also their interests have gotten more diverse, which has allowed us to bring a lot more stuff over that normally might have gotten passed over, which I think is cool.
Thank you.
Good questions, you guys. Oh my gosh.
Hi.
Hi.
David Luce here with IamThink.com.
I am Think. What an awesome name.
Thank you. And as everybody else says, thank you very much for taking some time with us
no
here. This is
problem.
great. So, looking through what I could find on IMDb, which we all know how reliable that is,
Yeah.
but it looks like you've leaned a lot more towards animation than a lot of other voice actors. Usually there's a reasonable split, but it seemed like a fairly small number of game titles, and most of them were large indies, if that isn't a huge,
Right.
giant, counterintuitive phrase there. Smite, Explosion Man, Orcs Must Die, the middle as far as sales and things like that. Is that a conscious decision that you've stuck with most of the animation and done some of that, or is it just kind of how the auditions have worked out, or?
It's being in Dallas, Texas, and not being in
Okay,
LA.
so it's geographic.
Yeah, it's geographical.
Okay.
Because in LA, you get all the prelay animation, you get all of the, and there's a little bit of that done, like I did Aqua Teen Hunger Force last year with the guys in Georgia. But I did it through Patch. So everybody's kind of branching out a little bit more. But really, we've got Gearbox in Dallas, we've got High Res in Dallas. So really, it's the local companies. And now I think the LA companies are starting to realize, because they've had some issues with unions and Texas is right to work. And so they're like, hey, we could go to Texas and these guys already know what they're doing. So there's a possibility that more game work will come of it. There's also a lot of game work that we don't even know that we're in, or it's not listed because they don't tell us what the title is. Like they'll use some crazy title.
So they don't even tell you, when they give you like a working title, they don't even tell you if it's animation or video.
No, well, you'll know if it's a video game, but they'll say like I think Borderlands 2 when we were working on it was like, Wheaties or something like that. Because they don't want you to go tell all your friends,
Right.
even though you've signed a non-disclosure agreement, they're so worried that you're going to go tell all of your friends like, oh my gosh, I'm working on Borderlands 2 and this is what it's all about. Little do they know, I am not a gamer, so I have no clue how any of it works. I usually only find out I've been in games because my brother is a video game tester for 6 Foot, and so he's always like, hey, you're in this game. I'm like, awesome! It was called Chocolate Chip Cookies when I worked on it, but I guess it's something cooler now. But yeah, the anime stuff is because I started out in Houston at ADV and Sentai now. And then Funimation, and there's just not as much prelay animation work there, unfortunately. As much as I would love to do more of the prelay work until it comes to Texas, like I really love where I live and I like my place and my family and my friends around me, so I'm not really the type to like pick up and move to LA. So yeah, it's not a conscious decision, it's kind of what's available. I do a lot of commercial work, but nobody wants to hear about the voice of the Albertsons lady. Yay!
Albertson.
Yeah. So I mean, like you don't get to talk about that stuff as much, but yeah, the animation stuff. It's what's available in town.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Andrew from Wicked Anime with the Nerdy Show Network.
Awesome. I like it.
And I want to ask you, so with your personal experience with anime and the anime industry, maybe things that you've watched yourself, what is your favorite anime, not necessarily one that you've been in, like just your favorite anime show?
I like it, and this is gonna be a little weird because everybody goes, really? Because it's kind of hit close to home before. My favorite is actually a movie, and it's Perfect Blue.
Yes.
I love it. And everybody's like, because I had an issue with The Stalker for a little while, and I had to stop going to conventions, and they're like, that's really your favorite anime movie? Because I maybe would not choose that one. I'm like, but it's a beautiful film. And I forget the director's name.
Satoshi Kon.
Thank you, Satoshi Kon. Yeah, all of his Millennium Actress, like all of his films are brilliant, but that one was the first one that I watched. My brother started with Dragon Ball in Spain, and so I would watch stuff with him, and I remember being like, okay, I get it, Ghost in the Shell, I get it. That was the first thing that I watched with him, and I was like, oh, that's rad! Like, I really dig that. It's been a long time since I've watched it, so I should go back and see it again, but that's definitely my favorite.
Awesome.
Hello, Monica.
I know who you guys are.
Oh, yeah. for those uninformed,
Yeah, there you
Jim and CJ from the Toonami Faithful podcast. So the last time we met at Anime Boston, we talked at length about how Funimation really believed in Michiko and Hanshin. We were there for the premiere screening. Now that it has aired and finished up, how did you and the rest of the office take the incredibly positive reactions and the ratings for Michiko and Hanshin?
It was awesome because it was a show that we fell in love with while working on. And it was so disheartening because, like, even the year where we did the premiere and it was like 10 people showed up, we were like, yay! But oh god, I wish this auditorium was full because it's such a good show and nobody will ever know. We had no idea that it was in the works for Toonami. Like, we didn't know that anybody had talked about. Nobody said anything, and then all of a sudden I start getting texts from people that are like, "Oh my god, congratulations!" And I'm like, "Did I win something? Like, what happened?" And I think it was Jade actually, who's like, "Oh my god, we're gonna be on Toonami." And I was like, "What?" And then right after that, Bevins, Michiko and Hanshin is going to be on Toonami. I'm like, ah! I mean, it was such a great, brilliant show and so different than the norm. So as much as I enjoy Toonami, sometimes they have the same things over and over and over again. And I get it because they're old, wonderful titles that people want to see over and over again. But I really love that they took a chance on something that was completely different, especially at that time. And really gave the show an opportunity to shine. Because I really think it's such a strong message. And even still in anime, it struggles with strong messages for women sometimes, just because of the culture difference. And I feel like that show was such a strong message to women. Like, hey, look at this bond these two create. They're not blood related, but they still have this mother-daughter bond that you don't come across every day. So I thought that was a brilliant message, and it was just a great show. I mean, from the art to the music, everything was brilliant. So I'm so happy that it finally got the love. It was like the little engine that could, because we were all like, oh, it's so awesome. You guys don't understand. Everybody's like, yeah, I'll watch it later. It's great. And then when it was on Toonami, people are like, I mean, I guess I'll check it out. They said it was cool. And all of a sudden people are like, oh my god, that show is awesome. I'm like, do you think I'm going to lie to you? Like, I work on a lot of anime, and I will be the first to tell you, there are some wonderful works of art out there. There's also a lot of crap. So, I'll be the first one to be like, you should watch this show. I would never be the person to be like, don't watch this show, because that's not nice. But I will always tell you, you should watch this show. And that was one of the ones that I was like, please, everybody. It was awesome.
We must say real quick that
Yes.
One of our followers on Twitter said that you played a better black mother than most black mothers do.
I got a huge compliment. Godswill, who's actually here at the convention, who works for Funimation, came into the studio and he was with a tour. And I was working on Umi Hebi in Snow White, who's the pirate queen, so she's way down here too. And so he was like, oh my god, you were Michiko. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you were so good. I was like, thank you, man. He goes, I thought you were black. I was like, thank you. That's like the biggest compliment you can give me. I was like, thank you. I love it. I was like, but you know what's funny is that my inspiration in Michiko was not that. Like, I wasn't trying to, play a black woman. I was just voicing the character, and she was more reminiscent to me of the cholas that I grew up with. You guys know what cholas are? Yeah. Like the girls with the drawn-on eyebrows and everything, because I'm Hispanic, and I always thought they were so freaking cool, and I wanted to be like them, but they didn't want me to hang out with them because I was this pasty girl. They're like, you're not Hispanic. I'm like, yo puedo hablar español perfectamente, sí, yo soy. And they were like, well, you're still white, so no. So she was kind of like that embodiment of those cholas I never got to hang out with, believe it or not. So when people tell me that, I'm like, thanks! But I didn't even realize that's what came out. Hey. But I love that show. It's so awesome. Hi.
Hola.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Bien.
Muy bien.
I'm Melanie, representing Teens in Print.
Awesome.
And honestly, I'm only 18, and I just now figured out that you voice Hello Kitty, and my sister's in love with Hello Kitty. But I also know that you voice many different characters. Like you could go from Brigade or on Host Club to, you know, the amazingly evil Rize from Tokyo Ghoul, and I'm just wondering, which character out of like all of you played have you connected the most with?
Oh, which one have I connected the most with? At the time, there's a show called Razafon. That's a really, really great show. It's about giant robots, and I think that turns a lot of people off. But it's not really about the giant robots as much as it is the personalities and the characters. It's a really character-driven show. And at the time, I was the same age as the character. We even had kind of the same hairstyle. The person who was opposite me was Chris Patton. We've known each other since we were like 17. So it was this whole kind of thing that worked in my favor, and it kind of just felt like all the planets kind of aligned, and it just felt like I was being me. I was being badass me, but I was being me, and it was really cool. The only other character that I've had that kind of really strong connection with, believe it or not, is Tomoko in Watamote. I don't know why, but I was a really shy kid, like really shy. Like my cousins would come say hello to me, and I would turn bright red and like, I don't know what happened. I did hit my head on a windshield. Maybe that like things up. But I struggled with like social anxiety and stuff as a kid. So to me, Tomoko was kind of like my opportunity to get back in that head that I was in as a child, and then be like, oh wow, but she's actually acting on all of these things that I never would have done. So that there was a connection there. I'd say that to an extent I'm connected to all of them, because whenever you perform a character like that, you put a little bit of yourself into them, and a little bit of them comes to you. I know that sounds really crunchy, granola, but it really is true. Like, there's a little bit of all of them up in here. Sounds crazy. But yeah, you walk away from it changed just a little bit, from the experience, from the putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. But those are the two that I'd say probably. Although I did eat a lot of cupcakes while I was doing stocking. Stocking helped me gain some weight.
So, working on something like Shin-Chan and painting stocking with Garderbell, you're given the ability to deliver dialogue with both the level of hilarity and vulgarity as something like South Park or Rick and Morty, which, by the way, sometimes when I'm bored, I sing I's rendition of Rockabye Baby.
Oh, that's awesome!
However, have you ever been given a line of dialogue in any of these series or anything that you've worked on in the past that you were kind of taken aback by, like you were almost guilty of saying?
Oh yeah, in Shin-Chan, so what you guys saw on television, we had 3 lines for Shin-Chan. Your first line was that this is probably the best thing for television because it's okay to say. The middle one was, we're not sure we can get away with this, but it's really funny, so go ahead and you can try it. And the third one was, we're never going to get away with this, but oh my god, it's hilarious, you should say this, just so we have it on record. So, yeah, there were a few times that I had to say, there was something about green cards. I remember being like, oh, ow, whoa, Dad just got his, so that's a little close to home. So, yeah, it's like there were a few things that, I mean, I still said it because, especially in Satomi's voice, it's fun to say anything, because she's like really sweet and high and everything. But the one, what cracks me up is on my agency website, like this professional site where people come to hire me for jobs. They have some anime clips. And one of the clips that they have is Ai Tsutomi from Shin-Chan saying, talking about the toilet thinker and how, my mom's gonna hang you up by your testicles until they look like ramen raisins. And I've actually had people hire me for gigs commercially, and I'm like, doing my commercial thing. Come down to this dealership and buy a new car. You're like, that was great. Can you do the line about the rotted raisins? Yes, I can. So it's funny how those things kind of follow you. But yeah, there's never been anything that I haven't said. But it's funny that you mentioned the song, because one of the options we did for the song that we knew was never going to get past copywriting. But do you guys remember that old song, I'm in Love with a Stripper?
Yeah.
So she was singing that to him, and so instead of it being like rockabye, it was like, I'm in love with the stripper, she won, she owned my nipple, and I'm in love with the big man. So yeah, it was so much fun, but of course that'll never see the light of day, but it's in the like vault at Funimation. So.
Until now.
Yeah, until now. But yeah, it was totally fun. And we would do stuff like that on Chin Chan and see what we could get away with. There was nothing I didn't say, no. I'm like, eh. There were a few times where I was like, oh God, I feel uncomfortable about this. But luckily nobody has brought those things up, so we'll just pretend they never
All right, continuing that line, you've had some roles where you've had to really kind of exert yourself in some interesting ways, like say Hyatt from Excel Saga.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is the strangest thing you've ever had to do in the booth?
Hyatt was pretty weird. For those of you that don't know Excel Saga, I played a princess who comes down to Earth and has a problem with the atmospheric conditions and therefore pretty much dies of the consumption at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
So it required me to like be in a booth in front of a microphone and put water in my mouth and then like do all this horrible dying stuff. It was awesomely fun, but yeah, it was very strange. Another one was at the end of Moon Phase. They're drowned, like they're sinking. They're on a sinking thing. And Colleen wasn't happy with me going, so she actually got a bowl of water and made me stick half of my face in the water in front of electrical equipment, like microphones and stuff, and was like, I'm talking in the water. I was like, this seems dangerous. Like, this seems really dangerous. So that's been weird. There's been times where we tried to do the recording together like the Japanese do, but because of the way our microphones worked and stuff, we had 4 studios that all looked in on one another. So I was in a booth here, and then somebody else here, somebody else here, somebody else here, and your director's in the middle. And we realized very quickly why we couldn't do that. It was a fun experience. I'm like, hey, wow, there's other people, and we can play off of each other. But everybody works at different paces, because, you know, usually the Japanese, it's not the finished animation, so they have room to act. Whereas we are like, we have flaps to match, and that's serious business. So that was a weird, there's been many. We had people come from Gonzo, the studio, to Houston back when we were doing a lot of the Gonzo shows, and they brought all of these Japanese businessmen to show them this wonderful work that we were doing at ADV. And they go in and see Chris Patton, and he's all like serious, having a dramatic moment. And then they see Lucy Christian, and she's all dramatic and having a moment. And they come into my booth where we're working on Peacemaker Karagane, and I play the angry pig. And so the whole time they're like, oh, this is Monica, and she's been working with us for a while, and she's one of our most prolific voice actors, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, konnichiwa, you know, doing all my Japanese hellos, and then I get in the booth, and it's all snot and pig noises, and they're like, oh, okay. One guy was like, Genki. I was like, yeah. But yeah, it's been an interesting career, like I think over all of it, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of weird stuff that's happened. A lot of good weird stuff, though. I will say that this is not what I planned to do as a career, but I can't imagine doing anything else. Like once I found it, I was like, oh yeah, this is where I belong. This is totally where I belong. That's a great question.
So this is one of my favorite questions to ask because it's led me to quite a few new animes and actually one of my favorites. What do you think is your best or your most important to you role?
Ooh.
Not necessarily a favorite, although it might be the same, but which one do you go like, no, that right there, that was really good or really important, like I needed to do that?
There's several. I was so excited that in the opening ceremonies, Princess Nine was a part of the opening. Princess Nine is a show that didn't do as well here because it was not very well known. It's a show about a girls' baseball team, not a softball team, like a girls' baseball team. But it's not so much, again, like Razafon, which is another one of those shows that's fantastic. I like the real character-driven stuff. And it's all about the lives of those girls and what's going on with them at that time. And that character, I tell people all the time, that's when I learned what voice acting was. Like, before that I had done it, and I was like, I get it, I think. When I did Princess Nine, I realized something clicked, and I went, I get it now. Okay, so I'm pouring my heart out into this character. So definitely Princess Nine. Razafon was another one. It was just a show that was so deep, and everybody was such a part of it. Michiko and Hachin was another one that just touched my soul. Like, I absolutely loved it. Death Parade is one of the newer ones that, I mean, it had a lot of, like, there's a core cast, and then everybody kind of filters through. You have different characters every episode. And for Funimation's cast, it's been the opportunity for everybody to have their moment to shine. It's really cool. It's about a show. It's a show basically that's about good and evil and death, and I totally recommend it because it's a brilliant show. But not only that, I did episode 3, I think 3 or 4, and I was playing opposite Ian Sinclair, who's a good friend of mine. But I was playing this kind of self-involved reality show woman who has children and all this stuff, and he's playing this poor otaku that's trying to get along with his mother, and just what happens throughout, and I mean tears, like real tears, just crazy, crazy, crazy. I've got chills. That one was definitely one that hit me hard. There's so many, but I'd say that those are the ones that are in the forefront. Like those are the main ones that I go, that was powerful, like, that was strong, that is like right here. So those are the big ones.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother and I run a panel at each convention we go to, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the terminology of the nerds and the fandom.
I'm pretty slut.
So we run a psychology and science panel about waifus and husbandos. You know, crushing on fictional characters.
I like it.
Who is your husbando as far as anime goes?
You know, the first time that I ever went, ooh, that guy's cute, and then thought, what am I doing? There's a show called Generator Gall, and it was one of the first shows I ever did, and there is a character who is this guy, and he's tall, and he's got a green ponytail. I think his name is Koji. And he was voiced by Jay Hickman, and he had this green ponytail, and it just flies in the wind in the opening, and I was like, ooh! And then I had a moment of, wait, that is an animated character, what am I doing? But then now I've gotten used to it. So, I'd say that I'm working on Prince of Stride right now. I love Heath. I love Heath Hasakura. I think he's great. He's such a bro, which is totally not my type. But man,
It's never your actual type.
I know. Like, he's so awesome. Like, he's just so much fun. So yeah, Koti, and who else? There's got to be another one. Oh, I'll have to think about it. But yeah, I have several.
Good to know. Good to hear.
Yeah, we do the same thing. Like, we talk about shipping and all that stuff. Because I didn't understand what shipping was. For the longest time, I was like, why is everybody talking about, like, UPS and FedEx? Like, what is going on? And somebody's like, no, you know, like a relationship. I was like, ah! So then my dumbass went and got online and was like, let me look at these fairy tale ships. That's basically porn right there. I was like, okay, I won't do that again. So I've learned to pick up on stuff a little faster. But waifu and husbando, we've even, my fiance and I joke all the time. I was like, am I your waifu? And he goes, of course. I'm like, okay, you can be my husbando. Yes.
So considering how much you believed in Michigo and Hakushin, what would be a show that I really like that you are prominent in was A Certain Magical Index. I really love that show. It's one of my top 5. And I'm wondering what your elevator pitch would be for it to air on Toonami. I think it would do really well on it, and I think if someone like you was say, it might actually get to other ears.
I do. I think A Certain Magical Index would do super well. Like, I think it's a fun show. And you've got Railgun, because they're always worried about the shows that have a longer series. So that's one that you could actually play the two, and they kind of pop in back to back. And it's also, there's a lot of darkness on Toonami right now, so it might be good to lighten it up a little, guys. So yeah, Index would certainly do that because it has a little more of that comedic element. It still has the drama, it still has the fighting, it still has all the stuff that Toonami watchers are used to. But at the same time, it has that lighthearted fun that I think some of the shows don't have as much of right now. So I'd love to see Index on Toonami. Another one I would love to see on Toonami is Tokyo Ghoul. I'd love to see Tokyo Ghoul on Toonami. I'm like, that totally fits into what they've got going on right now. I'm like, you want, violence and all that stuff, go Tokyo Ghoul. But Index would be a nice vacation from the darkness. Plus, I mean, who doesn't want to hear me bite people? That's great.
So, as an inner city minority teenager, whenever I talk about anime and how much I love it, I get these strange looks, and I'm wondering if maybe when you meet new people and you mention what you do, if you get any strange looks jokes or some comments and how you deal with that?
The first thing I always get when I tell people that I'm a voice actor or they find out I'm a voice actor, they're like, oh my God, do you speak Japanese? Like, oh, no, I wish I did. You'd think after like 17 years I'd be able to, but no, I don't. That's the first thing that I have to explain to them. No, it comes from Japan. Somebody else translates it, we adapt it, and I voice it, and I'm like, okay. And then, yeah, there's a lot of times, Ron's really good about it. My fiance is a loan officer for a mortgage company. He is the antithesis of anime. But when we started going to the conventions, and I started him off really small and built him up, because I was like, I don't want to scare him outright. Let's see, because he's a normie. Let's see how he adjusts. And sure enough, he got there and he loved it. He's like, oh my God, everybody's so nice. And they're so passionate. And all they want to do is talk about these things that they're passionate about. I was like, I know. That's why I love the community. And I love going out and talking to you guys. It's not just like, oh, aren't I awesome? Look at all the things I've done. Nah, I couldn't care less about that. It's about talking to you guys and being like, connecting over stuff, connecting over anime, and trying to empower you. Because if I had somebody who told me when I was a young actor, like, hey, you know that voice that everybody picks on you for and like makes fun of you for? Like someday that's gonna be your calling card. Or, hey, you know how you're all shy and everything? Maybe you should just put on a costume and be somebody else for a day and be really liberated. Like I would have loved that. So that's what I try to do now. And going from that aspect, when people talk to me and they're like, oh, so people like, they dress up in costume, like isn't that weird? I'm like, actually no, it's not. Like I wish I had known about it in high school. I would have totally done it. I would have been at conventions every weekend. So yeah, I try to like take kind of the stigma away. Because Ron especially, like he fit in really quickly. But then he'll tell people like, oh, I'm going to an anime convention this weekend with my girlfriend. He's like, people will be like, what, anime? He's like, oh, you know, like this show and all these shows that you've watched your whole entire life. And they're like, oh, and people dress up in costume? And then he explains why people dress up in costume and why this happens in cosplay and this and that. And they're like, that's really cool, man. Is there one coming up nearby so I can go check it out? So it's funny because I'm doing a convention in Dallas, like one of the big Comic-Cons, and I've got all these realtors and like financial folks who are coming out because they're like, I want to see this. Like, I want to check it out. Because I think what happens is when we don't understand things, we tend to turn them into bad things. Like if you don't understand it, all of a sudden that's a bad thing. So the point is to like come across and educate people. Like, hey, it's okay you don't have to wait till Halloween. If you really love a character and you feel like, hey, you know what, I'd be stronger in my business meeting if I was wearing a Superman cape. Wear a Superman cape! You know what I mean? Like, just do you, totally. And so I think it's about education. Like he was even on the elevator. I guess there's a convention going on with, oh, hey, move on. With some kids, or I guess there's a Girl Scout convention or something. Oh, real mood lighting.
It's going down.
Who's turning it off?
But he was talking to the parents that were on the elevator, who were kind of like looking at all the cosplayers and like, and when they all got off, they looked at him and they were like, what's going on? Like, what is happening? What is this? And he explained the whole thing, and the more he talked about, oh, you know, like Pokemon, and the girls were like, I watched that show, and all of a sudden it wasn't scary anymore. It's like, oh, okay, that's what that is. Well, we should go check that out. So I think that's the thing, is just educating people and letting people know, like, this is something that I enjoy, and if you don't like it, that's totally fine. But I enjoy doing this, and my friends enjoy doing this, and this is why we do it. And I think, too, anime's come such a long way that it's so much more acceptable than it used to be. Like, there was a time when it really had a stigma. I would say, I'm a voice actor for anime, and you'd be like, oh, porn? No, not at all, because that's what people associated it with, was animated porn. I'm like, no, it's not that at all. So yeah, just be diligent about making sure that you educate people and talking to them, and that's all I can do.
Okay, we're going to try to fit one more round of questions.
Awesome.
So if everyone can, yeah, thank you. All right.
Okay, so this month, fans and viewers are going to be able to hear you as Kashima in Monthly Girls. Which, first off, I watched the whole thing. You were phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
The whole cast was like pitch perfect when it came to that dub. So, when voicing this character, how did you go about balancing out both her princely mannerisms with her tendency to be a bit of a dense dunderhead from time to time?
It was totally fun. I mean, I always dream about playing those characters, like those male characters that, of course, I'll never get to play because I'm not a dude. But like, you see Tatum play Sebastian, or you see like, all these regal anime characters. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do that. So literally, what I was doing was kind of emulating what I see Tatum do and what I see Ian do and what I see Todd do, and taking that. I just love the character because she has those two dynamics where one moment she's just this smooth, hey princess, how are you doing? Good to see you. And then the next moment she's like, woo! I don't know what's going on. What is life? So it's fun to play that dynamic a lot, but mostly it was fun to kind of step into the shoes of like the Todds and the Tatums and all those people and be like, I get to be the prince now. I love that on their little clip when they did the cast announcement.
Yeah.
Like it's all me talking like this, and at the end I'm like, I'm the prince, and they kept it in. I was like, that is so me, and it's so that character too. So it worked out really well. Yes.
All right, earlier you mentioned that Michiko and Hachin was one of those shows that you kind of just placed people in front and said, watch this, watch this, watch this. With that getting to Toonami getting huge success, what would be the next title at the top of your list to have people just sit there and say, watch this, watch this, watch this, and why?
The next title, I'd say it'd be a toss-up. Death Parade is one of those that I think really kind of took what we think about anime and shook it up and turned it upside down and went, here. Which it's deep. Like, it's one of those that you walk away going, am I a good person? Like, am I really, maybe I need to be a better person. So I think anything that you walk away from with that kind of change is awesome. Tokyo Ghoul's another one, because there's a lot of social commentary that's happening underneath everything that seems like, oh, they're ghouls and they're eating people. There's a lot of underlying issues and messages in there that I really love. And another one is Yona of the Dawn. What a great character for women, for young women especially, because you can see this girl who kind of goes from being an entitled, spoiled brat and turning into this strong woman who is leading a pack of men. Like, you're following me and we're going to do this. And they're all like, all right, yes, ma'am. So I love that that's such a great message for young women. So those would be probably my top 3 right now. Garo's great too, but I don't want to spoil anything. It's still so new.
So we've talked about a lot of different things that you've done in the booth and a lot of things changing from here to there. Have you ever had any roles that have ended up with a drastic change from the time you were cast to when you started recording? Like anything where they cast you for one thing is like, okay, do this for us. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay, let's do that. And you get into the booth and they're like, actually.
It happens a lot because what will happen is you'll audition and then they'll match up all the voices and then they'll go, okay, well, Monica did this high voice, but then this person came in and auditioned for this character with a high voice and it really works well for this character, so let's have you kind of go a little lower or maybe like go a little higher to kind of match. So yeah, it's interesting to watch the voice directors on either side because what they're really doing is kind of leading an orchestra. It's like, okay, well these two people sound good together, and then let's add this person. No, there's like a dissonance. Let's put this person. Oh, there we go. But then maybe we need to pitch this person a little higher. Okay, that sounds better. So it's real interesting to watch. So yeah, there's been times where I walk in. There's been times where I walk in to do a character, like with Monthly Girls. I went in to do a totally different show. And it turned out that they were like, oh, well, we finished that show, so we're going to have you do this show. And I'm like, sweet, I'd rather do the show anyway. So it works out. So yeah, you never know what's going to happen. And it's, especially with the broadcast dubs at Funimation, things move so fast that sometimes you go to the studio and you don't even know what you're working on that day. You're kind of like, I'm here. And then you're like bouncing from booth to booth, doing all kinds of crazy voices. So yeah, it can get a little intense, but it's different daily, which is good because I have ADHD, so it keeps me like focused. Yes.
So with all of your experiences in the booth, what was the most fun you've ever had in the booth? Maybe not even necessarily doing a voice at the time, like just having a fun studio experience.
Probably the most fun I've ever had in the booth is we did a commentary for Puni Puni Poemi. It's an old title, like a spinoff of Big Cell Saga. And we did this crazy commentary where we were all in different booths, and there was like 6 of us. And I was in a booth with Brett Weaver and Chris Patton. And we had a big, like a fish pillow. And we were hitting each other and just being ridiculous. And that was so much fun. Like, the old ADV days especially, because we weren't as concerned about like who's watching this, do we need to be, like, it was just us being ourselves on commentaries and stuff. So like there's one for Najika where it's Kira, Vincent Davis, and I, and they're like, oh, you guys had to have been drunk. And it's like, no, somebody literally gave us like energy drinks. We chugged them and we're like, like just ridiculous on the commentary, but it was so much fun. So yeah, those are probably the commentaries and stuff. Now it gets a little harder because they actually want you to be like, you want it to be educational. And I'm like, well, that's harder. If you want me to just be my silly self, that's easy. But when you want me to actually like be educational, that's a little
Those do make the better commentaries.
I think so.
Yeah.
Let the companies know that, because they're like, no, it needs to be educational. People need to learn. I'm like, if they wanted to learn, they'd be watching the Japanese commentaries, because that's where the people who actually created it came from. We're just the voices. We're not even the original voices. We're a voice option. So how about you just let us be silly? But, you know, yes.
So going outside of Toonami for this one, what went through your mind with the pro-LGBT themes in Yurikuma Arashi as Ginko?
I absolutely love that show, and I love that message because that is such a strong message that needs to be told. And again, I can't remember the director's name, but I love the director I worked on.
Ikuhara.
Thank you. I worked on Penguin Drum, and so it was nice to kind of go back into that world. But for those of you that don't know, Yurikuma Arashi is basically a show. In Japan, there's this thing where if you're young girls and you have like a lesbian experience, that's okay. Because you're just playing around, you know what I mean? You're gonna grow up and you're gonna have kids and marry a man and everything's okay. But if you don't grow out of that phase, like then they're like, oh no, you can't do that. Like you can't be an adult lesbian. Like that's not allowed, that's incorrect. You need to have a husband and you need to have children. So it was kind of showing like it shouldn't matter who you love. Like if you were a grown ass woman and you wanna love another woman, more power to you. And they just did it in this cute effect with lilies and bears, but it's a really strong show. And if you really look, once you get past the beginning, because it is very convoluted at first, because that's kind of how Ikuhara does stuff, is like, hey, I'm gonna make it all sparkly and pretty, and then I'm gonna go, bam, here's a message in your face. And I love that message is out there, because it's true. People should be able to love whoever they want. It doesn't matter. Like, that's great that it's okay when they're kids, but then when people grow up, if they continue to love women, then they should be able to do that. Like, what's the big problem? So yeah, I loved being a part of that show too. And it was fun too because Jamie, Marky, and I got to kind of play off each other again. She got to be the high part this time, and I was the low one. But yeah, that was a brilliant show. I love that one.
Well, once again, like being a teenager and trying to make friends with similarities. Whenever I mention anime, and I almost always get that, oh, that's for kids. I try to convert them, and I try to tell them, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Do you think anime is for all ages?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, the like biggest attestament to that I can give is Panty and Stocking. Like, you can't watch that until you're 8, or you shouldn't until you're 18, because that's foul. Like
One of my examples.
Right, it's like that is not, and that's I usually use that one as a gateway. Like if Ron has a friend coming over, he's like, I don't know about anime. I'm like, check this out. It's only 15 minutes. See how I feel. And then they're like, what was that? I'm like, exactly, because it's not all for kids. What I try to explain to people, I try to tell them, like, it's multi-genre. It's like any other medium, like television or movies. Like, you're going to have your horror anime, you're going to have your kid anime, you're going to have your dramatic anime, your slice of life anime, your anime about vampires, you know what I mean? So it's trying to explain to people, like, it's not just for children at all. Unfortunately, here in the U.S., especially for a long time, we used to just completely think of, oh, it's animated, so it's for kids. That started to change because of South Park and Family Guy and all that kind of stuff. But they're still kind of like, oh, well, if you watch Family Guy, you're a young stoner, right? That's what you do. No, like, I'm a 40-year-old woman, and I watch Family Guy. So, like, it is definitely for adults, too. It's just that a lot of people see Pokemon and assume that is the quintessential, or Dragon Ball, like, well, that's what anime is. And it's like, no, there's so much more than that. So yeah, you just have to like keep pushing at them. And the ones who are gonna see it are gonna see it, and the ones who aren't. You know what I mean? Like, you be you, and try to educate them. And if they're not willing to listen, then boo on them. Yeah, especially if they're your friends. They should be interested in what you're interested in, just because.
All right, thank you. So right now,
Oh yeah, let's.
Oh, I'm gonna go.
cue clap.